Hi, and welcome to another edition of Unfiltered with 305. And I am your host, Annabelli Gizzi. And with me today, we have
Emma Fink,
Tess Lozar,
and Alaina Kulikowski.
Thank you all so much for joining me. Let's get into some background of our story. Today we'll be discussing the story of Harold Shipman. One person you can always put your trust in is your family doctor, right? But for nearly 250 people, this was not the case. Dr. Harold Shipman was born in Nottingham, England in 1946. He excelled in school and sports, but his life was dramatically altered when he was just 17 years old. That same year, his mother Vera, with whom Shipman had a close relationship, was hospitalized with lung cancer. While she was dying in the hospital, Shipman witnessed how the specialist managed her pain by giving her morphine. He later went on to attend medical school and quickly moved up the ranks to become a general practitioner. He got married, had kids, and had a seemingly normal life, but in 1976, he found himself in trouble with the law. He was forging false prescriptions of Demoral and strong opioid the doctor had become addicted to. Shipman was fired and forced into rehabilitation, but recovered quickly and created his own family practice. He was known around the town for being helpful and kind, but no one knew that this good doctor had a secret. Shipman killed his first victim, Eva Lyons, in March of 1975 with a lethal dose of diamorphine. He had enough of the drug to kill hundreds of people, and no one knew until years later that his addiction persisted. Shipman would take advantage of his patients' respect by diagnosing them with conditions they didn't have, and then would proceed to give them lethal injections, which experts believe was inspired by what he witnessed with his mother. For almost 205 people between 1975 and 1998, their visit to Harold Shipman's workplace would be their final. So guys, to start our discussion, I wanted to talk about his mother a little bit. So she was diagnosed with lung cancer, and was hospitalized, and Harold Shipman kind of grew up with seeing that his mother was sick and stuff. How do you guys think that played into his legal issues?
Well, I know that growing up, he was his mother's favorite child. Basically, she had told all of her kids they grew up really poor, and she was like, your main goal in life is to get out of here. So he basically just wanted to please her, and that was his main goal in life. So I feel when his mother died, maybe that's why he went on to be a doctor, but I mean also probably witnessing her death was something that made him think to himself oh, I want to put people out of their misery, because he saw her dying and he meant so much to her. Mm-hmm. But I mean obviously that got taken out of hand. He started diagnosing people that didn't even have illnesses. Yeah. So
it also probably caused major trauma to him with his traumatic life, seeing that no one wants to see their mother getting killed right in front of them. So I think that kind of just like Emma said, sparked something in him where he's wow, she's out of her misery, I can do that if I become a doctor.
Right.
And whenever he got into that medicine and everything, he was this was what killed my mother, and he saw his patients and decided, let's give it a try.
Mm-hmm.
There was some rumors about this, and I heard about this, that right after his mother died, he didn't really talk about it to many people that he knew. He was kind of somewhat a sheltered and antisocial type of kid, and they said that as soon as after he found out that this happened to his mother, that he apparently just started running around his town, just ran, and he didn't stop until the next morning. And many people think that that high that you get from exercise also tied into that, because he started doing that almost every day after his mother died.
I can't imagine that you grew up with this whole situation. I know that I have family that's experienced cancer, but you never really get a high off of that, and you're normally typically very sad inside, but you don't normally get I don't from just her having cancer, I don't know how he developed that addiction to just
no.
Yeah, I mean
it's
also
weird.
I feel he had some sense of relief that she was no longer suffering, but also it's odd that he could take it that far.
Yeah, also though, I feel what most people would experience with that is he went into medicine, I think, thinking I can put people out of their misery, in the sense of killing them, rather than oh, my goal in life is to make people better, which is what most people would take from that. Their goal would be to save people, not kill people. And also I just find it so strange, so most serial killers, they have a traumatic childhood. So and he grew up, he was poor, but like other than that, like his mom and his dad were like very kind, like normal people. They loved him a lot, and like he was his mother's like golden child. So I just like don't see where everything went wrong.
Obviously, after that happened, he definitely, a mental illness had to happen that like caused him that. But like even like what Tess said with the running, like I know from personal experience, like my mom lost like a lover to cancer, like she just ran after. Like it's more common than you think to just like run after, but like again, after death you get addicted. And the first part was probably running, and then we know he got addicted to like opioids and other drugs, so it's obvious that's how he coped with it. But yes, he definitely, a mental illness lasted a pretty long time if he starts like killing.
I think it obviously fueled something for him, because according to some people, he didn't have any interest in like the medical field before that event. Like he didn't want to be involved in anything before his mother's death.
You know, he actually had like no motivation in life before his mother's death. Like basically, like it was actually like kind of weird, because his mother was like his best friend, but like not in like a normal way, like, oh, like I love my mom, but like they were like a little too close almost for like his age. And so his only focus in life, like he was his mother's sole caretaker, because his brother was too young whenever she was diagnosed, and his dad was the only like provider for the family, so he had to go out and work. So he was his mother's sole caretaker like up till the time of her death.
Do you think something could have happened, like, I don't know, I'm not trying to get incest or something, but do you think there was something else going on, why he loved his mother so much?
I mean, in a typical relationship, you love your mom a lot, and you know, different things happen whenever you lose a loved one. I mean, different ways of grieving, but this like one that we read about was just very like odd in a way. I don't know how to put it.
It's definitely a little weird. Like definitely like what's going on?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys know about Albert Fish. He was like a grave robber. He was the guy who Texas Chainsaw Massacre was based off of. It kind of reminds me of him, because he was like obsessed with his mother, and like he actually like, well, not that this guy did this, but he like dug up his mom's body, and he like it was crazy. But I mean, it kind of reminds me of him, because he was like obsessed with his mom, although his mom was like abusive, so it was a little bit different. Like this, like Shipman, like his parents loved him, so it was a little bit different. But like, I mean, I don't think there was anything else like going on behind closed doors or anything. I just think that it was definitely like a little bit weird. Like he was just a little too close to her at that age. Like it's cute whenever you're little and you're like, oh, like I love my mom, but like whenever you get older, it's like there's a point where the line has to be drawn.
I think that it was more of like an obsession with like injecting than more of his mother. I feel like when he saw his mother getting all those treatments, that kind of triggered like, oh wow, like that's like, I want to do that. Like I feel like that kind of triggered the obsession a little more than his mother, so to speak. But I wanted to talk about his first victim, Eva. What do you guys think that he was thinking whenever he like put the first dosage in the poor woman?
Honestly, I think that probably the first times that he did that, he probably honestly believed that he was somewhat helping them. Like he saw that them put his mother like out of her misery, but he wanted to do that, but I'm sure that it kind of just morphed into, I want to have some sort of control over this person's life.
Yeah, but it was weird though, because like he diagnosed them with conditions that they didn't have.
Maybe he had a feeling he had some type of like God complex, where you're like, oh, I'm superior, and like, oh,
I have control over
I have control over this person's life, so I'll make up this like diagnosis.
Yeah, it's just really odd, because like I was thinking about it and I was like, well, if he like diagnosed them with conditions they didn't have, then like why would he be needing to put them out of their misery?
It's almost like Munchausen by proxy, which is like that thing that like, it's like whenever you basically like convince yourself, like it's a need to take care of other people to the point where you will make them sick.
I'm gonna bring up Grey's Anatomy for a second, but do you remember like that episode where it was like the woman like was convinced she had like a rash, and like the doctors were like, no you don't, but she kept like imaging, she would like keep scratching and scratching. Maybe he had like something with his mind too, because he already obviously had mental illness and trauma. Maybe he like convinced himself something was seriously wrong with these people, or he just like got a high off killing. And like I wonder, after he like killed his first one, did he like watching them die? Like I don't know, like was it more creepy in a way?
I personally didn't read about this, but I wanted to know, like, what did he do with the bodies after? Like
I heard something about this, and it was kind of odd, because somebody said that he would place them in a spot that seemed like they died naturally. Like, he would, like, put them up in, like, a sitting position and all that. But he would also tell the families that he, like, did a full inspection, some sort of, like, autopsy type of thing. But he would, when they found the bodies, they would have, like, all of their clothes, all of their jewelry, still had their shoes on, and they realized later that, like, it's impossible to do some sort of, like, full inspection when they were still in, like, the state that they were, then they died.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird situation that, like, many outcomes could come out of it and many reasons for why, but we never really know why people do the things they do. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about, why do you guys think that he used diamorphine? What, like, do you think that, like, he had, like, a kind of, like, better option, kind of? I don't know how to word it correctly, but, like, do you guys think that, like, diamorphine was, like, the correct dosage for him to use, or do you think that he maybe was thinking about putting other things into other people?
I mean, I don't know. I feel like he used multiple drugs, I thought, though. Was it just my
and then, like, Daramore,
Do you think he, like, I don't know, like, experimented to see which one he liked better to kill his, like, patients, or did he, like, how one affected the patient, or like, I don't know, did they go out peacefully? Did they, like, spasm?
I don't think it was like an experimental thing per se. I think it was just, like, whatever worked. I think he literally just, like, found what worked and then he stuck with it, and that's the reason, like, why. And I also think it's interesting, like, obviously it's because of, like, his, like, childhood, like, with his mom. That's, like, why he chose to kill his victims the way that he did. But I just think that it's interesting that, like, that's the way that he chose to kill his victims, because, you know, that's the first serial killer I've heard of that's done, like, lethal injection, basically. Because, like, you know, most people take a more hands-on approach, or, like, a gun or something like that.
I know that he had his own addiction. Like, he had enough to kill, like, hundreds of people just with him, because he would write, like, false prescriptions, and that's how he got in trouble, like, the first time with the police. Like,
well, he went to rehab, so
like, why do you think, though, like, after rehab, how is he so easily, like, he had his own practice and, like, more patients came to him?
That's what I was wondering. Like, normally after rehab, you don't go back into working
he had
that
weirdly
soon.
A very short rehab.
Yeah.
Like, he was fined, I think they said, like, less than, like, $600 for, like, even, like, false prescriptions and stuff like that. Like, it was very little.
He faked that he was okay or something like that?
I think he found
how he was able to leave so quickly?
I think he was probably okay with, like, his addiction to, like, drugs, but I mean, he had a whole other addiction that nobody knew about.
Right.
Like, what he was doing, when you killed upwards of, like, 250 people, that's an addiction. I think he had an addiction to, like, what it was about killing people. I don't know. Like, I don't know if it was watching the life leave their bodies. I don't know if it was, like, him thinking that he was putting them out of their misery or whatever, but it was an addiction that he had to killing people, whatever it was that was specifically, like, he was addicted to. But there was something obviously driving him to do that, and I think that was an addiction.
He also could have a little bit of OCD, like that obsessive, like, once he did it, he kept having to do it, and things like that.
I totally think
yeah.
Especially because of the way that he was with his mom. I totally agree that, like, OCD definitely played into that.
Like, I can't imagine, like, families of, like, these patients, like, I just, like, can't imagine, like, how they were feeling when they found out that, like, their family doctor, like, essentially murdered their family members with lethal injections.
Also,
like,
how did his family feel like? Like, he had a normal family. Like, they did not suspect anything. Like,
he had wife and kids.
Like, what did they think?
Can you imagine, like,
like, find out your dad,
like, the fact that he, like, lived this
killer?
completely normal life. Like, everything about this man was, like, it was, like, aggressively normal. Like, he grew up in a normal home. He had a wife. He had kids. Like, everything about it was normal. Also, my question is, like, how did his wife just, like, sit back and, like, not, like, know that any of this was going on? Because here's the thing. Number one, it's a problem with law enforcement, because it shouldn't have continued after he went to rehab. People should have started picking up on it. I don't know how he killed 250
people. He was, like,
people.
like, renowned in his community. Like, his reputation was really good,
I just don't understand,
which is really odd.
No, but also I heard, like, another side of story that, like, people knew about it. Some people did, but they didn't have enough evidence to actually, like, put a lawsuit against him and things like that near the end of it.
Like, after, like, 100 victims, like, it's really, and especially because he wasn't like a serial killer who would like hide, like he wasn't necessarily like hiding, he wasn't hiding his identity. People just didn't know that he was doing that.
And you would think that if you keep hearing people dying, like passing away from like the same place, like eventually you would think someone would catch on.
Yeah, there was a police investigation at one point because somebody got suspicious, but nothing ever happened with it. Like after like 2 weeks of them being in his office, they just kind of like completely dissolved it.
Yeah. That's
But like if you're a patient, you're like, oh, it's my doctor, it's fine.
right.
Like
You can
I
trust
can,
things
yeah,
that
you
they
can
say.
trust.
That's
Right.
that's what got people. I feel like that's partially why he went into that position, because he knew that he knew that people would trust him, because
Right.
doctors are the people that we trust like most in society, because like they're the people who are supposed to make you better, or at least try their best to, not murder you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You seem like somebody that you could put your trust in, like that you
Yeah.
would like hold their opinion pretty high.
Like any doctor I go to, whether it's like orthodontist or dentist or just like my regular family doctor, like I always go in there and I feel safe and trusted. But like obviously that this like wasn't
There's nothing
the case.
that they would say that I would like question. That everything that they would tell me, I would feel like it was the truth.
Right.
So that's probably why he got
Exactly.
like established this sort of reputation.
And maybe that's one of the reasons that people didn't catch on so quickly, is because he was constantly diagnosing them with fake conditions, and you know people put trust in their doctors, and I think that's one of the main reasons that people didn't catch on
And
earlier.
there wasn't like really advanced technology yet, so they couldn't
That's
like talk about to like online people to get like more connections, because
Right.
nowadays like I bet you could talk to anybody and everyone put their insight in, but it was just like the 70s and like a small like little community. You didn't have that yet.
Yeah. Also, one thing that I wanted to touch on, which I thought was really interesting that I read, was that so after his mother died, whenever he decided that he wanted to go to medical school, he didn't have the grades to get into medical school. Like he was actually not, like, I mean, he wasn't dumb, but you know, you have to be like really smart to go into medical school.
yeah.
And the only reason he got in was because they were having a shortage of doctors in England at the time. And so that's the
wow.
reason that they let him into medical school. So it's just like crazy to think that like he wasn't even really qualified to be a doctor. The only reason he got into medical school was because there was a shortage, and like he had like some like C's and like D's, and they still let him into medical school.
Yeah, that's like so strange, because you think that would never happen today. Like
It is
No.
insane, like comparing it to the qualifications that are needed. I saw something that he trained at like some infirmary for like less than a year, and then they gave him his license after he like went to med school, and now you have to do like college, med school, residency, all for like 4 years each, just to be able to go out and practice.
Do you think it was a mix of also like the government at the time, because again they were having a shortages of like doctors, where they just like get anybody, like they weren't careful or anything like that? So could have this been prevented, you think?
I definitely think it could have been prevented. I think that it might have been easier for people to catch on a little bit, but I just think that that trust factor really played a huge role with like trusting your doctor and stuff. And you know, it's not as technological as we are today. I mean, we didn't have the things and the resources we do now to diagnose all these different types of diseases. So I think that plays another role, but what do you guys think?
I think it's interesting that like comparing it to today too, about like the qualifications that we have today. Like people said that with his nurses and like with pathologists and stuff that would come to like give shots or take blood, he wouldn't let anybody like inject anything or take blood from anybody. He would say that he wanted to do everything himself, like write up everything. Like it's just interesting that nobody thought that that was odd, that he wanted to do every single thing himself.
Do you think he still would have killed even if he didn't become a doctor? Like he would have done it another way?
I think he would have found another way. But again, we don't know if his addiction started whenever he first injected it into someone. So I feel like if he never took that first injection into someone's body, I feel like it could have been easily prevented. Or maybe he just has an addiction and he would have used it somewhere else. We don't know. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I think he would have found a way, because somebody who has those kinds of tendencies cannot just like live a normal life.
It's true.
Well, I mean, you can live a normal life, but like you do things behind closed doors. And I think that he would have found a way, whether it was like, I mean, personally, one of my hypotheses is that if he hadn't been a doctor, so since he was a drug addict, I mean, my guess is that he probably would have found people on the street who were willing to buy from him and laced their like drugs. So like because that would be another way that he could get to people, which I'm surprised he actually never did that, because like
I feel like it would be connected to drugs in some way, especially because of his addiction and because of his experience with his mother. Like, it would probably be connected to that no matter what.
And obviously he's in prison now, but like, how long was the case? Does anybody know, like, how long it took them to, like,
Well,
sentence?
I mean, he did kill 250 people, and maybe more than that.
It was over the span of, I think, when he had like, his license at least, that it was like less than 20 years that all of that happened.
Yeah, but I think, I mean, the case probably took a little while to go through, because that was 250 charges of, I think that would be, I don't know which degree of murder it was. I don't know what they charged him with.
Well,
It was like,
life sentence, so probably.
Right.
it was odd for them to like figure out how many they actually had, because I think that when the case first was introduced, it was like 18 people. That's what they first started with. And I read something that like he would greatly influence the families to like cremate his victims, and so because when they buried them, that they could go back and look for traces of morphine like in their system.
Yeah.
So there might have been even more than we know, because some people you can't prove.
To kind of wrap things up, I wanted to discuss, he was sentenced to prison for life, obviously, and then he eventually took his own life. Do you guys think that if no one ever saw or noticed that these things were going on, do you think that he could have killed like significantly amount more people?
I think that he probably would have killed more people, but I think there was already suspicions of him going around, so I feel like eventually something would have happened, but I feel like if like the last victim that actually brought up the case and that she taught, like, there was mention that he wrote up her will and that like he said that like all of her assets are left off to him, is that I don't know if that was, those suspicions would have been taken any farther.
Yes. Well, Shimon was sentenced to life in prison in 2000 with the request that he never be discharged. He was imprisoned in Manchester, then transferred to Wakefield Prison in West Yorkshire, where he died. Shimon was discovered dead in his cell on January 13th of 2004, the day before his 58th birthday. We never understand why people make the decisions they do, but this closes our segment for Unfiltered with 305. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.